Hi guys, this week we're going to talk about chapter 12. If you remember from last week when we did chapter 11, we talked about nutrition during pregnancy and infant life stages. So picking up from there, chapter 12, we're going to talk about nutrition from age 1 all the way up through age 100. First, nutrition for children. The energy and nutrient needs of children. So, calorie and protein needs are a little bit different for children. For 2 years old, the recommendation is 1,000 calories with 13 grams of protein per day. For children that are 6 years old, um, the calorie needs increase to 1,600 calories per day with 19 grams of protein every day. Their carbohydrate recommendation for children is the same as for adults, with 45 to 65% of total energy intake. The fat recommendation is a bit higher for children than for adults. The recommendation for calories from fat for children is 30 to 40% of their total energy intake for ages 1 to 3, and 25 to 35% for ages 4 to 18. As children grow, the recommended proportion of calories from fat decreases. Water needs for children can meet water needs by drinking enough to satisfy thirst in most situations, and micronutrients are needed in smaller amounts than adults. Like adults, a varied nutrient dense diet can meet all vitamin and mineral requirements. Calcium needs. The RDA for children ages 1 through 3 is 700 milligrams per day, with the recommendation for ages 4 through 8 increasing to 1,000 milligrams per day. Adequate calcium intake during childhood is essential for achieving maximum peak bone mass to prevent osteoporosis later in life. Vitamin D. The RDA is 600 IUs, which are international units, the equivalent of 15 micrograms per day for children, adolescents, and young adults. Iron. For children, the RDA is 7 milligrams per day for ages 1 through 3. That increases to 10 milligrams per day for ages 4 to 6. Iron is important for children because it's required for growth, and obviously, during a child's development, they're going through a period of rapid growth. Also, iron deficiency anemia can impair learning ability and intellectual performance. Iron deficiency anemia should be treated with iron supplements until iron stores are replenished. However, supplements should be kept out of the reach of children to prevent iron toxicity. Developing healthy eating habits. What we learn to eat as children affects our food choices as adults. Caregivers decide which foods are offered, when, and where foods should be eaten. It's the child's responsibility to then decide whether or not they'd like to eat, what foods to eat, and how much to consume. With age, choices are increasingly affected by social activities, what they see at school, and what they see their friends eating. What to offer a child. Balanced and varied diet, adequate in energy and essential nutrients, and appropriate to developmental needs with appropriate portions. A healthy meal plan based on whole grains, vegetables, and fruits, including adequate milk and other high protein foods, and containing moderate amounts of fat and sodium. The best indicator of adequate nourishment, either too little, too much, is normal growth pattern. So we talked about those growth charts that they have for infants in the last lecture. There are similar growth charts for children. So how a child is progressing along that growth chart could suggest adequate nourishment, or whether or not a child is maybe receiving too little or too much food. There is a MyPlate for kids. I know you guys have seen the MyPlate for adults. The icon of the MyPlate, looks the same, but obviously in the case of children, the size of the plate and the portions are much smaller. So we have the picture of the plate shown here, and then below you can see how, excuse me, how the amount for each food group um, changes as a child gets older, but is still much less than it is for adults. Increasing variety. Introduce new foods into a child's diet regularly. Food preferences are learned through repeated exposure, and a food may need to be offered as many as 8 to 10 times before a child is willing to accept it. Try to introduce a new food at the beginning of a meal when the child is hungry. Allow the child to see their parents or peers eating it, or try to incorporate healthy foods into familiar dishes. A good example of this is the frozen pureed squash that we mixed into our mac and cheese at the beginning of this semester. Limiting juice consumption. Most fruit servings should come from whole fruit with limited amounts from 100% juice, not fruit drinks or cocktails. Limit juice to 4 to 6 ounces per day for children ages 1 to 6 and 8 to 12 ounces for children over age 7. Offering meals and snacks. Small, nutrient-dense meals and snacks should be offered ideally every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day, and snacks should be as nutritious as meals to ensure that all nutrient needs are being met. With children, it's important to establish a consistent meal pattern. Children thrive on routine and feel secure when they know what to expect. Children who eat breakfast are more likely to meet nutrient needs and do better in school. Meal settings. Eating meals together helps connect with family and culture. Family mealtime is associated with better school performance and decreased unhealthy weight loss practices and substance abuse. Eating patterns, attitudes, and feeding styles of caregivers influence what they learn to eat. Make sure to give children plenty of time to finish eating. Mealtime should not be a battle zone, and food should not be used as a reward or a punishment. The National School Lunch Program. To improve the nutrition of U.S. children and promote nutrition education by teaching children to make appropriate food choices. In the National School Lunch Program, meals are provided free or at reduced cost if a family's income is at or below 130% of the poverty level. Each school lunch includes servings of milk, high-protein foods, vegetables, fruits, and grains, and are required to provide 1/3 of the RDA for protein, vitamin A, vitamin C, iron, calcium, and energy, and they can't contain more than 30% of the calories from fat and 10% from saturated fat. Federal guidelines regulate foods sold at snack bars and in vending machines that compete with school lunch programs. If foods or vending machines are turned on and are made available to children during lunchtime, they must provide at least 5% of the RDA for one or more of the following: protein, vitamin A, vitamin C, niacin, riboflavin, calcium, and iron. I know when I think back to when I was in grade school, we did have vending machines, but they were only turned on very early in the morning when people were just arriving and in the afternoon when people were getting ready to leave. We weren't able to purchase from them during the day, so that they didn't compete at all with the school lunch program. Addressing excess childhood weight. In order to address excess childhood weight, it's very similar to addressing excess weight in adults. First, you need to focus on changing both eating and activity patterns. Weight loss for children is rarely recommended, so instead, professionals recommend a slow weight gain to allow them to grow into weight. Denying food may promote further overeating, so restrictions should be relatively mild. Also, try offering nutrient-dense foods. Physical activity is recommended for children at least an hour per day. Any increases in activity need to be gradual, and it's a pretty good habit to start limiting screen time for children to encourage physical activity. Preventing dental caries or cavities. Primary teeth guide the growth of the permanent teeth. A diet high in sugary foods promotes the formation of dental caries. Soft drinks and other sweetened beverages, sipped slowly between meals, increases the duration of contact between sugar and bacteria on the surface of the teeth, increasing the risk of tooth decay. Hyperactivity. Hyperactivity involves extreme physical activity, excitability, impulsiveness, distractibility, short attention span, and low tolerance for frustration. Children that exhibit hyperactivity typically have more difficulty learning, but these children are also usually of normal or above average intelligence. Sometimes hyperactivity can be associated with a larger syndrome known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD, but that isn't always the case. Causes of hyperactivity. One huge misconception that I'm sure we've all heard before is that hyperactivity is caused by eating sugar. This is not true, okay? We've all heard this before, but the truth is this is false. It's not actually supported by any research findings. Instead, what we find is children that exhibit hyperactivity may be consuming a lot of caffeine, either from soft drinks or even from some coffee drinks in some cases. They may have a lack of sleep, overstimulation from screen time, a desire for attention, or a lack of physical activity. So if a student is sitting at their desk all day and they don't have the opportunity to go outside for recess, or maybe don't get to go outside and play when they get home, that can lead to them feeling really restless and can cause them to act out or maybe be hyperactive and not really be able to communicate to an adult why they're feeling that way. But in more cases than not, it's just because the child, has excess energy that they need to get out through physical activity and they aren't having the opportunity to do so. Currently, there's insufficient evidence for the dietary treatment of ADHD. Some children are sensitive to specific additives and may benefit from a diet that eliminates them. However, there is no recommendation across the board for any dietary intervention for ADHD. Lead toxicity. Lead poisoning can affect children for a variety of different reasons. We see lead as an environmental contaminant in air pollution. It also is a component of old house paint, which certainly here in Maine we have plenty of. Lead pipes in some plumbing and some ceramics. Lead is toxic, especially to children under age 6. It accumulates in bones, brain, teeth, and kidneys, disrupts nervous system functioning, causes learning disabilities and behavior problems. Lead poisoning contributes to iron deficiency anemia, kidney and nervous system changes, and in serious cases can lead to seizures, coma, and death. The effects of lead poisoning are permanent, and iron can be removed that says iron, it should say lead. Lead can be removed medically if detected early enough. So we're done talking about children. We're going to move now into nutrition for adolescents. During adolescence, organ systems develop and grow, puberty occurs, and your body composition changes. There are changes with sexual maturation and social and psychological changes in adolescence influence nutrient intakes. When we're talking about nutrient needs, we have DRIs for two specific adolescent groups, ages 9 through 13 and ages 14 through 18, with separate recommendations for boys and girls because their needs begin to differ during adolescent years. These graphs are in your text. This first one on the left here is showing the growth rate compared to age and years for both males and females. So you'll see these two peaks here indicating when adolescent growth spurts occur for both girls and boys. So for females, you'll notice that growth spurt occurring earlier, just maybe 11 years old, and then males hitting that growth spurt, a higher growth spurt, but later closer to 15 years old. And then when we talk about body composition changes, this graph here on the right is showing that in boys, they see an increase in their lean body mass as compared to their fat tissue. And then in girls, as they go through puberty, they actually have a higher fat body mass and as compared to their lean body mass. So you can see there, I know we've talked about it in adults before, but that change in body mass really starts to take place during adolescence. The nutrient needs of adolescents for calories, the energy needed usually exceeds adults. Okay, so typically calorie needs for adolescents are greater than adults. Boys require more energy than girls due to more muscle and larger bodies, so because of their lean body mass and higher muscle tissue, adolescent boys typically require more calories than adolescent girls. Protein requirements per kilogram of body weight are the same for boys and girls. However, boys require more protein because they are heavier. So proportionally, it's the same per kilogram of body weight. But because boys have more body weight, the total amount of protein that's recommended is more. Proportions of calories from carbohydrates, fat, and protein are recommended similar to adults. But again, because the calorie needs for adolescents are higher than adults, while the proportions for calories from carbohydrates, fat, and protein will stay the same, the total amounts will be increased because the total amount of calories is larger. For B vitamins, recommendations are much higher in adolescence than in childhood due to higher energy needs. Iron needs, the RDA is 11 milligrams a day for boys and 15 milligrams a day for girls ages 14 to 18. The needs for iron increase between childhood and adolescence. Blood volume expands faster in boys, requiring more iron. However, menstruation increases iron losses, making total iron needs greater in girls. Bone health in adolescence. The RDA for calcium is 1,300 milligrams per day for everyone, boys and girls, ages 9 to 18 years. Adequate calcium intake during adolescence is essential for achieving maximum peak bone mass to prevent osteoporosis later in life. The RDA for vitamin D, again, is 600 IUs, which is the equivalent of 15 micrograms per day for children, adolescents, and young adults. Beverage consumption for teens can be an issue as children age and become teens. They have a lot more freedom about what they consume every day. So where children, are probably given water and milk and other nutrient-dense beverages, teens, whether they're hanging out with their friends or choosing the beverages that they're drinking at school, their beverage consumption becomes a lot more unhealthy. So we see in teens the largest amount of their beverages coming from sugar-sweetened beverages at 46%. So we know that sugar-sweetened beverages includes things like sodas and Gatorade, other sports drinks, and beverages that don't have a lot of nutrients. Milk consumption in teens is about 29%. 12% of beverages consumed by teens are 100% fruit juice, and the remaining 12% are an other category. My plate recommendations for teens. Again, like children and adults, the icon for my plate looks the same. However, you can see that below that icon, the amounts and proportions of servings for each of the food groups is different depending on age and also by gender. Vegetarian diets in adolescence is sometimes when people start trying different meal plans. A vegetarian diet can be a healthy choice when carefully planned to meet nutrient needs. However, a poorly planned vegetarian diet will be no healthier than any other poorly planned diet. Meatless diets can be low in iron and zinc, and vegans may be at risk for a vitamin B12 deficiency and inadequate calcium and vitamin D intake. These are obviously all nutrients that are really important for adolescents to get in their diet. So anybody practicing a vegan or vegetarian diet, whether they're an adult or a teenager, really needs to make sure that they're still consuming adequate amounts of all nutrients. Special concerns for adolescents. Eating disorders are sometimes experienced by adolescents. Also, those participating in athletics have increased nutrient needs. Steroids can stunt growth in adolescents and cause sexual and reproductive disorders, heart disease, liver damage, acne, and aggressive violent behavior. Sometimes for athletics, weight restriction is maybe suggested by a team. That can certainly affect nutritional status and maturation and increase eating disorder risk. Your book talks about what is known as the female athlete triad, just talking about teen females who are athletes and how that increase in physical activity, coupled with other changes in adolescent females, put them at increased risk for nutrient deficiency. Smoking in adolescence. Smoking in adolescence increases the risk of cardiovascular disease and lung cancer. It can limit appetite, especially in those teens that start smoking to control their weight and resist quitting due to the fear of weight gain. Adolescents that smoke may consume more saturated fat and fewer fruits and vegetables, further increasing their risk of heart disease and cancer. While alcohol consumption in adolescence is against the law, there are still certainly teens that participate in alcohol consumption. Binge drinking in anybody is considered at 5 or more drinks in a row for men, or 4 or more drinks in a row for women in about 2 hours. So that's for, whether you're an adult or a teen. You are considered intoxicated, legally intoxicated, not able to drive, if your blood alcohol level is greater than or equal to 0.08 grams percent, which is milligrams of alcohol per 100 milliliters of blood. This leads to risk-taking behaviors and blood alcohol levels causing loss of consciousness, coma, and death. Alcohol and energy drinks are a dangerous combination. I know that that combination of beverages is often popular with younger drinkers and people at parties. It's particularly dangerous to consume energy drinks with alcohol because the caffeine from the energy drinks has a stimulant effect that counters alcohol's depressant effects. All this means is that it results in a drunk person that does not feel drunk. However, their judgment and motor function are still impaired. All right, that's the last slide for teens. So we're going to move on into the adult years. So nutrition for adults. Life expectancy. The average length of life for a population in the US is 77.9 years. However, the healthy life expectancy is only about 70 years. On average, life during the last 8 years is restricted by disease and disability. So it's important for you to understand the difference between life expectancy and healthy life expectancy. The goal of successful aging is not just to increase life expectancy, but also increase healthy life expectancy. It certainly doesn't do anybody any good if life expectancy were to, say, increase to 100 years, but for the last, say, 20 years, you were restricted by disease and disability. That really wouldn't be any fun. This is important for individuals, family members, and insurance and public health programs. Also, a healthy diet can delay the onset of chronic diseases, which contribute to the disease and disability that some seniors experience in their final years of living. As health programs become better and prevention programs are stronger, life expectancy over the years has increased drastically. Now you can see in this graph comes from your book, looking at the year 1900 through 2050. The red line indicates the number of people in the United States age 65 or older, in millions, and the blue line is those age 85 or older in millions. And you can see how much the number of folks in those age groups have increased, even just in the last 20 years. It's quite a bit. Aging. This definition I always love because it's really just kind of to the point. So the textbook defines aging as the accumulation of changes associated with and responsible for an ever-increasing susceptibility to disease and death. Pretty positive, isn't it? But it's true. During the aging process, we experience a loss of cells and cell function. But the effects of that loss are not felt for many years because organisms start with more cells and cell function than they need. With aging also comes a reduced ability to repair damage and resist infection. Lifespan. So lifespan, you'll notice, is different than life expectancy. Lifespan is defined as the maximum age to which members of a species can live. In humans, that lifespan is about 120 years. How long individuals live and the rate of aging is determined by a combination of genes, lifestyle, and avoiding accidents, disease, and environmental toxins. Nutrition for adults. The DRIs for adults are divided into 4 different age groups. The first, young adulthood, is ages 19 through 30, middle age, ages 31 through 50, adulthood, ages 51 to 70, and older adulthood over age 70. Nutrient needs of older adults. Calorie needs decline with age due primarily to increases in BMR and due to decreases in BMR and activity level. The need for most nutrients, however, does not change. So, to meet nutrient needs with lower calorie needs, it's even more important for older adults to consume a nutrient-dense diet. The proportions of calories from carbohydrate, fat, and protein that are recommended are similar to those for younger adults. So, specific nutrient needs for older adults: vitamin B6, the RDA is greater in adults, greater than or equal to 51 years versus younger adults, because higher dietary intakes for adults over 51 years is needed to maintain the same level of function. For vitamin B12, it's recommended that people 50 years of age or older consume fortified foods or supplements. Food-bound vitamin B12 is not absorbed efficiently due to atrophic gastritis, which is an inflammation of the stomach lining causing reduced stomach acid. If somebody has this condition, it can also lead to reduced absorption of iron, folate, calcium, and vitamin K. Now, if you remember, vitamin K is really important for blood clotting and wound healing. So if somebody is older, they already are at higher risk for disease and disability just because their body isn't able to heal as fast. So if they're also experiencing a reduction in vitamin K absorption, that's only going to further limit their body's ability to repair itself when there's damage. Nutrient needs of older adults: iron for the RDA for iron for women at age 51 and older is 8 milligrams per day, which is the same as adult men of all ages. This decrease happens from what's recommended for adults younger than 51 years. Once a woman turns 51, that iron recommendation decreases to 8 milligrams. The assumption is that after that point, a woman will have ended menstruation, going through menopause, and without that iron loss as a result of menstruation, her iron consumption for women after that age is not as high. Calcium, the RDA for men greater than or equal to 51 years old, is 1,000 milligrams per day. However, for women older than 51 years, and both men and women over 70 years, calcium needs increase to 1,200 milligrams per day. This is due in large part to increased bone loss after menopause, and also, certainly as people age and become older, as I said before, their disability and disease risk increases, increased danger with slips, trips, and falls, easier to break bones. So you really want to make sure for older adults that they have enough calcium in order to strengthen and more easily repair bone damage. Hand in hand with calcium, we have vitamin D. The RDA for older adults 51 years of age or greater is 600 IUs or 15 micrograms per day, the same as for all other ages. However, the RDA increases for adults over 70 years of age to 800 IUs or 20 micrograms per day. Seniors are at increased risk of malnutrition due to decreasing muscle size and strength. This increases their risk of falls and fractures and overall physical frailty. Seniors have declining immune systems, which can increase infections, cancers, and autoimmune diseases, and decrease the effectiveness of immunizations. Also, chronic conditions can change nutrient requirements, decrease the appeal of food, and impair the ability to obtain and prepare an adequate diet. Physical problems and malnutrition. Arthritis is characterized as inflammation of the joints, pain, and sometimes changes in structure. Declining vision, such as macular degeneration, which is caused by a reduction of viable cells in the macula, which is the area of the retina that distinguishes fine detail. Also cataracts, which are characterized by a clouding of the lens of the eye. Both of these are thought to be caused by oxidative damage. which can be prevented or slowed with diets high in antioxidants and phytochemicals. Osteoarthritis is just one type of arthritis. There's many different kinds. I know my dad personally has rheumatoid arthritis. And rheumatoid arthritis is when your body's immune system attacks itself. So your body's immune system kind of starts to erode away the cartilage in your joints. It differs from osteoarthritis, which is what's shown here, in that in osteoarthritis, the cartilage between the bones in a joint get eroded away through just wear and tear. And so you can see on the left we have a normal joint, and on the right somebody who has osteoarthritis. So you'll notice the cartilage cushion between the two bones on the left and how that cartilage is missing in the example on the right. And this leads to the two bones rubbing together. Often that means a pinching or maybe a severing of nerves that are in and around that joint, leading to a lot of pain and damage to the bone. Seniors can also experience decreased mental status and malnutrition. Dementia is impaired memory, thinking, or judgment severe enough to cause personality changes and affect daily activities and relationships with others. Causes of dementia can include multiple strokes, alcoholism, dehydration, medication side effects, vitamin B12 deficiency, and Alzheimer's disease. Seniors are also at really high risk for depression. Here in Maine, we're a pretty rural state, so there are a lot of older individuals living in rural areas where it might be really difficult for them to socialize. Maybe their partner has died, so they're really lonely. Maybe their family has moved away. So depression, while it's something that can affect all ages, it's something that's of specific concern for older Americans. Increased risk of malnutrition. Medication side effects can affect nutritional status. For example, some may cause decreased appetite, changes in taste, and nausea. And diet can also change medication effectiveness. Many older adults live below the poverty level and or are on a fixed income, making it difficult to afford health care and a healthy diet. We have this term food insecurity. In public health, we talk about food insecurity all the time, and it's something that can affect any age group. But food insecurity is defined as the limited availability of nutritionally adequate, safe food or the ability to acquire food in socially acceptable ways. Health during adult years. A nutritious diet can extend an individual's years of healthy life by preventing malnutrition and delaying the onset of chronic disease. Regular exercise can help maintain muscle mass, bone strength, and cardiorespiratory function, helping to prolong independent living. Also, food assistance programs or assisted living facilities can help prevent food insecurity. Identifying older at-risk adults. The Federal Nutrition Screening Initiative promotes screening for and intervention with nutrition-related problems in older adults. To increase awareness of nutritional problems among the elderly by involving practitioners, community organizations, relatives, friends, and others caring for the elderly and evaluating the nutritional status of the aging population. This group has developed the Determine checklist to determine when malnutrition is a potential problem. So here on the next slide, we have the Determine checklist. I am going to go through it because I want to make sure that you know what each letter stands for. If the table looks small for you, it is table 12.3 in your text, so you can always refer there. So down the left-hand side, we have the word determine. First letter D stands for disease. So for a senior, the presence of any disease, illness, or condition that causes changes in eating can predispose a person to malnutrition. Memory loss and depression can also interfere with nutrition if they affect food intake. The first E, warning signs for malnutrition: eating poorly. So a senior might be eating either too little or too much, which in turn can lead to poor health. T is for tooth loss and mouth pain. Poor health of the mouth, teeth, and gums can interfere with an individual's ability to eat. The second E stands for economic hardship. Having to or choosing to spend less than $25 to $30 per person per week on food interferes with nutrient intake. R stands for reduced social support. Not having contact with people on a daily basis has a negative effect on morale, well-being, and eating. M stands for multiple medications. The more medications a person takes, the greater their chances of side effects such as weakness, drowsiness, diarrhea, changes in taste and appetite, nausea, and constipation. I stands for involuntary weight loss or gain. Unintentionally losing or gaining weight is a warning sign that should not be ignored. Being overweight or underweight also increases the risk of malnutrition. N stands for needs assistance in self-care. Difficulty walking, shopping, and cooking increases the risk of malnutrition. And the final E is elder above age 80. The risks of frailty and health problems increase with increasing age, putting those over the age of 80 at the highest risk. So this determined checklist is a way that anybody, not just a doctor, can think about loved ones who are of older age, and think about if they are in fact at risk for malnutrition. A lot of older adults are not very good at asking for help. So by identifying some of these risk factors early, and working to help somebody, you can really help stave off some of those problems, and keep them from getting worse. Again, my plate looks just the same, but the portions are going to be different. So you'll see below here how the portions of each food group vary based on age and gender. So we have the amount for a 20-year-old male, a 20-year-old female, compared to amounts for a 70-year-old male and a 70-year-old female. Excuse me. Keeping healthy. So for seniors, using foods of convenience that also have high nutritional value, some pre-cooked foods, frozen dinners, canned soup, dry soup mixes, and medical nutritional products, for example, Ensure or Boost. Regular physical activity can extend years of active independent life, reduce risk of disability, and improve quality of life. A physical activity program should improve endurance, strength, flexibility, and balance, and the recommendation for physical activity in older adults is the same as for younger adults. Economics and physical limitations. Seniors should be provided education about economics in food preparation or assistance with shopping and food preparation and reduced cost meals. Assisted living facilities provide help as needed with daily activities such as eating, bathing, housekeeping, and taking medications. Even though nursing homes provide access to food and medical care, residents are at increased risk for malnutrition. Now we're going to talk about the impact of alcohol throughout life. Alcohol can reduce nutrient intake and affect storage, mobilization, activation, and metabolism. The breakdown of alcohol in the body produces toxic compounds that damage tissues, particularly the liver. Moderate alcohol consumption is defined as 1 or fewer drinks per day for women and 2 or fewer drinks per day for men. This is important to know. Make sure you know this. Excuse me, this definition for moderate alcohol consumption. When we say a drink, we're not talking about a whole bottle of wine. We're talking about 5 ounces of wine, 12 ounces of beer, or 1.5 ounces of distilled spirits or liquor. Alcohol has been known to provide some health advantages, but again, this is going to be with moderate alcohol consumption or less. Chemically, the word alcohol refers to any molecule that contains an OH group. So this is a group of oxygen bonded to a hydrogen. The term is used to refer to ethanol and beverages containing ethanol. Ethanol is just a single type of alcohol, though it is what we know colloquially as alcohol. And ethanol is a small molecule produced by the yeast fermentation of sugar. Alcohol absorption and distribution. This occurs rapidly, and alcohol is almost completely absorbed in the upper GI tract. Some is absorbed from food in the stomach to produce immediate effects. However, eating while consuming alcohol does slow the absorption rate. Once alcohol enters your bloodstream, it's rapidly distributed throughout the body. Peak blood alcohol concentrations occur approximately 1 hour after ingestion, are affected by the kind and quantity of alcoholic beverage consumed, the speed of beverage consumption, whether or not food is consumed, an individual's weight and gender, and the presence of alcohol metabolizing enzymes. Alcohol metabolism and excretion. Alcohol travels to the liver where it's given metabolic priority and broken down before other molecules. About 90% of alcohol is metabolized by the liver. The remainder is excreted through urine or eliminated via the lungs. Alcohol acts as a diuretic, which increases fluid excretion and contributes to dehydration. Most alcohol is broken down by the liver enzyme ADH, or alcohol dehydrogenase. It's also found in all parts of the GI tract, and ADH breaks down alcohol at a fairly constant rate. With greater amounts of alcohol, MEOS, or microsomal ethanol oxidizing system, also metabolizes alcohol in the liver. As MEOS activity increases with high alcohol intake, metabolism of other drugs can change. Short-term effects of alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. It impairs mental and physical abilities. First, it affects reasoning. Then, vision and speech centers are affected. Next, alcohol impairs large muscles, causing lack of coordination, and finally can result in alcohol poisoning, which can slow breathing, heart rate, and the gag reflex, loss of consciousness, choking, coma, and death. Blackout drinking is defined as drinking enough alcohol to cause amnesia. Alcoholism is a physiological condition that needs treatment. Your risk is increased if you started drinking at a younger age, and there's likely a genetic component making somebody more likely to become addicted. Environmental factors also play a significant role. Alcoholic liver disease. ADH metabolism promotes fat synthesis, leading to fat accumulation in the liver. MEOS metabolism generates reactive oxygen molecules, causing oxidation of lipids, membrane damage, and altered enzyme activities. Both ADH or MEOS metabolism forms toxic acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde binds proteins and inhibits chemical reactions and mitochondrial function, allowing more acetaldehyde to accumulate, causing more liver damage. Types of alcoholic liver disease. So as a liver becomes more and more damaged from alcohol consumption, it might begin to accumulate fat around it, which we just discussed. This leads to what is known as a fatty liver. A fatty liver is the accumulation of fat in liver cells, which occurs in almost all individuals who drink heavily. If fatty liver continues untreated, it can lead to alcoholic hepatitis, which is inflammation of the liver caused by continued alcohol consumption. Now, both alcoholic hepatitis and fatty liver are reversible if alcohol is stopped and good nutritional and health practices are followed. However, if nothing is done to reverse alcoholic hepatitis, it can further increase to cirrhosis. Now, cirrhosis is chronic and irreversible. It's a liver disease that includes the loss of functioning of liver cells and the accumulation of fibrous connective tissue. This picture comes from your text, so the liver on the left is healthy. You'll notice it's very dark red. It has a lot of blood, allowing it to get enough oxygen and work properly. The liver on the right is the liver of somebody who had alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. You'll notice it's very yellow and orange. That's because of a heavy accumulation of fat cells. Not a lot of red there, so not a lot of blood getting to the liver, allowing it to work properly. Alcohol and health problems. Heavy drinking is also associated with cancer, particularly of the oral cavity, pharynx, esophagus, larynx, breast, liver, colon, rectum, and stomach. Moderate alcohol consumption, if you remember, moderate alcohol consumption is 1 or fewer drinks per day for women and 2 or fewer drinks per day for men. Can increase risks of certain cancers in women, violence, drowning, and injuries from falls and motor vehicle crashes. Alcohol use also increases the risks of hypertension, heart disease, and stroke. There are some benefits to alcohol consumption. For example, it can stimulate appetite, improve mood, and enhance social interaction. Light to moderate drinking reduces risk of heart disease and stroke. It can raise HDL cholesterol and inhibit blood clots. Phytochemicals in red wine are thought to be more cardioprotective than in other alcoholic beverages. And consuming alcohol with meals slows the absorption and may enhance cardiovascular protective effects. Finally, moderate alcohol consumption can be associated with reduced risk of death among middle-aged and older adults and may help keep cognitive function intact with age. Consumption of alcohol. Alcohol should be consumed slowly, no more than 1 drink every 1.5 hours. Sipping, not gulping, allows the liver time to break down what has already been consumed, and alternating non-alcoholic and alcoholic drinks will slow down the rate of alcohol intake and work to prevent dehydration. All right, that's the last slide that we have for chapter 12. A little bit shorter in length than some of the other chapters, but I hope you guys learned a lot, and I will see you in lab. Thanks.